Hello again. I'm back with another clock to repair, and this one is something new for me. I have worked on electric clocks in the past, and I have worked on chime clocks, but this is the first electric chime clock that I've come across. It's a Seth Thomas. I've already tried plugging it in, and I know it doesn't run. I'm still trying to figure out how old this clock might be, and I'm going to show you a few of the issues that I see with it. One is that when I open it up, the glass just falls right out. So I have to figure out a way to secure the glass into the rim here. And when you turn it over, on the inside of the back door here, it comes with directions on how to run the clock. And there's a little notch here that's supposed to hold a key, which winds a very thin arbor here. It turns some spring, which I'm thinking might be what controls the chime. Other than that, I really have no idea what makes this clock run. I don't know why it shouldn't run. And what I plan to do, my first step is going to be, I'm just going to remove the whole movement from inside the clock here and see what I can come up with. The chime arms are out of alignment, or maybe it's stuck halfway through a cycle because only one of them sort of makes contact, the others don't. So let me get started. It'll take a bit of time, but there's several screws in here I have to undo. Once I have it removed, then I will continue. I started to undo some of the screws up along this curved bar here at the top, and I realized I think those screws hold the brass rim to the front of the clock. It's probably just 4 screws down here holding the whole mechanism in, but I'm going to have to remove the hands before undoing that. And as far as snaking this power cord through here, I'm going to remove the plug so I can get the whole thing out of the case. So let me start with that. Okay, got this off. Next, I'm going to look to remove the hands. It appears as if there's a screw in the center here. We'll see how easy it is to loosen it. And it's too thick. Not bad. Very good. Now I'm going to flip it over again. And now I'll remove the movement. I've removed the 4 screws on the sides here, but it's still not budging. So now I'm thinking maybe the screws in the top of this are actually attached to it as well. So let me get those removed next. All the screws are out, and before looking to remove this, I should mention that it's written or stamped onto this plate here. It says number 1700. So I'm assuming this is model 1700. Anyway, let's see what happens when I lift it up. Okay. Now the trick is teasing this out of here because of the chimes that are sort of in the way. Okay, rather than waste a lot of time playing with it, let me just figure out how to remove it, and once it's out, then I'll continue. As you can see, I was able to remove it. It definitely took a bit of effort. And the first strange thing I see right off the bat is this plastic sleeve just kind of wedged in here. And I can't believe that this is supposed to be there. I have no idea. No idea what that's from. I mean, it would even block this from spinning. Anyway, let me get the case out of the way and I'll take a closer look at this and see if I can get a clue as to what's going on with it. Okay, put that to the side. One thing I am noticing also is that when I try to turn these, they're very tight, and this should really spin quite freely. So at the very least, if I can get the motor, which is over here, running again, and it should run. I've tested the circuit with an ohm meter, and there's continuity. But for sure, this probably is going to need to be disassembled and thoroughly cleaned and lubricated. So let me take a close look at this and figure out the best way for me to approach all that. And once I think I know what I'm doing, I'll continue. One thing I've done is I took a lot of photos turning it all around, so I have a pretty good reference point of how everything is supposed to look when I reach the point of trying to put it back together. But one thing I do notice that I'm hoping for is, here's the motor, and on this side there are 3 screws holding a plate here, and I'm hoping that if I remove this whole motor just may drop out, and then I can deal strictly with trying to find out why this is not running. So let me work on that, and then I'll continue. Another thing I'm noticing is in handling it, the hammers are really in the way. They were already a bit, I think, bent. You can see how they don't really line up properly. And I'd love to be able to remove them, but what I'm seeing is there are cables, wires hooking it up to here, which then gets hooked up to here, and I'm reluctant to remove this at the present time. So I'll just have to work around that and look to remove the motor. So as I said, let me work on that. I removed the screws holding what I thought was a plate, but it appears to be actually part of the motor, because when I go to remove it, I'll try to show this, the motor comes out with it. And the motor seems to be kind of coming out in half. The bottom half is moving down, the top half is staying put. And the reason I can't get it all the way out, and I'll try to show this, it appears as if there's a little gear right down in there, which is getting hung up on this lip of the motor. So when I pull it down, right there, it gets caught. So it looks like I have to come up with a plan B, which I think will be to fasten this back up together. And with all the manipulating and playing around with this motor that I've done, I'm going to look to hook up the power cord to it and see if maybe it's working. So give me some time to do that, and then we'll see where we're at. I've reattached the wire. Let me zoom in. It's plugged in. I'll turn it on, and we'll see what happens. And it's definitely turning a little bit. So I'm definitely leaning towards this thing needs a thorough cleaning and oiling. That might be all that it needs to get it working. So the next step is I have to figure out how to approach this in order to take it apart. So I'll work on that, and once I have an idea what I'm doing, I'll come back. I think I figured out how I want to approach this. It's going to be trying to take the plate off from this side. On this side, this is what they call the snail. All of this has to deal with how the clock chimes on the hour and on the half hour. And I would rather not have to take all of that apart. On this side, what I'm seeing is 2 screws over here, one in the middle. There's also a couple of really tiny C-clips, one here and here, which I have to pop off. And then when I turn it over, this bracket on top, there's a couple of nuts here and here, and also at the end here. And I'm thinking that once those are removed, this plate might come off. These little legs here will come with it, I'm hoping. Another thing of interest that I noticed on the instructions on the back of the case, it talked about, and there was a key supposed to come with it, which wasn't there, but I happen to have one that fits. And there are these 2 small arbors. One of them is over here, And what this does, if you turn it one way, it's the clock will chime, and if you turn it the other way, it'll turn the chime off. And you can kind of see how it adjusts it here when I turn this. Little lever here that moves. Where is it? Right there. Off and on. And on the other side, there's actually a spring that can be wound. It's right here. And that would work like this. And I believe what this spring does, it's what gets the chime to start. And as the clock runs, there's probably a gear here that winds the spring internally, so you don't have to keep winding it manually to get it to chime. Anyway, I'm going to spend some time undoing all of this, and we'll see how it goes. I removed this part again. Now I'm just going to take out these 3 screws here. And let's see what we have here. Look at that. Turns out those 3 screws were the ones that hold the motor in. Well, I should be able to easily clean and lubricate this now. A lot of dirt in here. So I'll work on cleaning this up, and then I will reattach the wires and see if it runs. So let me work on that. What I've done is I've thoroughly cleaned and lubricated the motor. A lot of dirt and grease was in it. You can see little specks of it on the towel here. And the problem is it seems to want to run, and then it stops. This flywheel here, when I turn it on, the magnetic field seems to pull it up against the housing, which seems to jam it, but I'll try to show you. Let me turn it on. Starts to go, moves to the side and stops. So it wants to go, and I'm not sure if it's because the gears that it's attached to are really quite greasy and dirty as well. But I think my next step is going to be to try to open the whole thing up, and hopefully cleaning everything will free up the motor so that it's running better than what I have so far. So let me get to work on that. What I've done is I removed those little C-clips I mentioned earlier, holding these stems over here, and that let me remove these pieces. And along with the 4 nuts that I spotted here, there's actually 2 more over here. This seems to be 2 plates together. I'm going to remove them and hopefully lift it up from this side. But no guarantees. Okay, next I'm going to take a closer look and try to very slowly separate the plates, and once I have it apart, then I shall continue. I was able to remove the first plate. And before I try to take off the second one, I'm going to take a few photos of the positioning of these gears and then see how they come apart. Perhaps even clean everything up here before tackling this portion, but I'll take a closer look to see which way I want to work it. It might be hard to see, but I don't want to move the whole mechanism for fear of everything falling apart. But I've removed all the gears from this first section and took some records of where they go, and I was able to get this plate off as well. And next I'll do the same, take a few photos as I remove these gears one at a time. Once they're off, then I just have to get everything nice and clean. I moved it up a little to make it easier to see. These couple don't come off. They're attached to gears on the other side here, and I'm not ready to remove these yet. So let me just work on cleaning everything up, and then I'll continue. The gears have been cleaned. I've also cleaned and lubricated the plates, the three of them. On the plates, I lubricate what's known as the bushings, which refers to the little holes that the gears fit into. And the tips of the gears that fit into the bushings, these are referred to as the pivots. So both the pivots and the bushings get lubricated. What I'm going to do next is reposition all the gears in the top half of the mechanism, and then I'm going to reseat the plate over it. And once all of that has been done, I will continue. I've seated the gears, I've reattached the plate. It's definitely the hardest part of the job. And if you're trying to do this kind of a repair yourself, as I mentioned earlier, take a lot of photos. It's the only way to be certain that you're positioning the gears in the proper position. Another trick that I've learned is when you are teasing the various gears back into the bushings and you have everything down nice and tight, as soon as you let go of one side to try the other, the plate pops up and they fall out. So what I'll do is when I get them in, I'll put these nuts on, not all the way tight, but just enough so the plate really can't come up too high. And by doing both sides that way, it works out. The next step is going to be to seat the gears here and reposition this plate. So let me get to work on that. I'll try to show how some of these go into position. One, two. In here, I have to put the parts that were held on with that little C-clip, if you recall. That goes there. Next, I have to seat the plate. And to do this, part of it, I'm going to have to undo the nuts over here, seat the plate, and then put the nut back on top. Prior to that, tease all these gears back into the bushings. So let me get to work on that. And once it's all together, I will continue. Everything is back together, fully reassembled. And one big difference I'm noticing is that when I originally removed the motor from here and tried to rotate the gears, I could barely budge them. They were really stuck from all the dirt and oil buildup. But now, when I give it a turn, they really spin quite freely. so that's encouraging. However, my main concern is if the motor's going to work. And the reason for that is I've seen similar motors to this, and this is what I call the flywheel. This should really be spinning very freely, and you can hear it's kind of rubbing. In fact, when you open it up, if I seat this little piece in here, that's how they should spin, almost with no friction at all. And I tried to look up, do a little research to learn something about these motors or how to fix them. And I found a site. It's the NAWCC, which stands for the National Association of Watch and Clock Collectors. And they have a forum where people post questions if they need help in repairing a clock or whatever. Anyway, I actually found two people who were working on this same clock, and the complaints that they had is that they couldn't get the motor to work. So maybe there's an issue with this type of a motor. I'm going to insert it here, and hopefully it'll work. If it doesn't, I'm certain that this is all correct. But if it's not running, I'm going to have to look into trying to get a new motor. So next, I'll put the motor back in. The motor's back in, and I have good news and bad news. The good news is that it's running, and I'll try to show you how that looks. The bad news is when I turn the clock up on its side, it stops. If I put it back down, it goes. And the problem with that is it has to be in this position if it's hanging on a wall. And I'm sure that the issue is this little play in the flywheel, the fact that if I raise it up, it would stop, and when it comes down, it goes. I even tried placing a washer in here to create some more space to prevent the flywheel from moving back up, but that didn't work out. Anyway, for now, that's pretty much it. It's a Seth Thomas model 1700. It's supposed to be a electric chime clock. And if I'm able to come up with a new motor, I may be able to come up with a part 2 to this video. Bye for now.